Welcome to the Better Man Podcast with Ivan and Suman. This podcast is all about how to be an optimal, conscious male in today's society. Are you ready to be a better man?
Everyone, welcome back to the Better Man Podcast. I've got a fantastic guest with you today. He's going to share his story. He's going to share his wisdom. He's got a big beard, so you know he's very wise. Even I don't look so wise because I don't have a beard, but this guy, he really brings it. You know, he goes deep into himself, and he likes to help other people go deep into themselves. We're going to be talking about the shadow self. We're going to be talking about, creating your avatar, creating your personality based on what it is that you want to obtain from life. And how to let go of the things that aren't working out for you. How to really let go to transition from point A to point B. My guest is Rainier Wylde. And he's got this Wild West cowboy style, this very vintage type of vibe, and he's really gonna bring it for us today. Welcome, Rainier.
Hey man, thanks so much for having me. And it takes a cowboy to know one. I'm staring at a very nice cowboy hat you have on right now.
Why don't we start with your favorite quote?
Well, I don't know if this is my favorite quote, but it's certainly one I've been rummaging around a lot lately. It's Friedrich Nietzsche, which incidentally I recently got a kitten for my kids, and it was with a lot of begging. I mean, my God, they cried openly, they pleaded, and so I relented. I got a kitten, but on one condition, that I could name him Friedrich Nietzsche, and in fact that we would call him by his full name every time we called him. So we now have a beautiful long-haired black and white kitten named Friedrich Nietzsche running around, which might be why the quote is so present in my mind. But Nietzsche said something like this: the world over, we assume that some men have multiple selves, while the majority of us have only but one. The truth is, most men have no self at all. And I think I've been turning that phrase over and over in my mind to some consequence, and I really love it.
That's very interesting because I was just thinking about that today. I was practicing using the microphone, and I like to give speeches like if I'm like talking to like 1,000 people, but I'm really just by myself. And the thing that they came to me was that most people don't actually think, and they're actually just using their past memories to make their future decisions, but they're not actually thinking. They're not using the higher faculty systems that we have.
That's right. From my experience, it goes something like this. You wake up in the morning and your alarm doesn't go off on time. And so instantly you feel rushed, you feel frustrated, your emotions spike. You kind of get them down by the time you get in the shower. You're excited for a nice warm shower, and so your emotions are maybe a little less than they were before. You turn on the water and it's cold, and then you realize that your partner hasn't left you any hot water, and you become annoyed again, and now your emotions have spiked up once more. And then you go downstairs and your partner didn't make coffee this morning, and now you're even more pissed off. And then you start to think to yourself, my God, the last time I was in a relationship, my girlfriend didn't make me coffee after quite a while when she used to. And so I wonder if this means the same thing that it meant last time, that she's going to leave me. And now you're mulling that over and you're feeling a little frightened. And so you call her and she doesn't answer. And you send a text and you say, hey, are you even in this relationship? And she doesn't respond, and you feel annoyed. You get in your car, you go to work, someone cuts you off. Now you're boiling. You're at like a 9, right? And you know that not only is your relationship done, but also you're probably going to die because you just can't even concentrate. You're so frustrated. Your boss calls you to his office first thing in the morning with an email that was waiting for you when you get to work. You know that you're going to be fired because you didn't get the reports in from last week. You go to your boss's office, and before he can say a single word, you say, hey, listen, asshole, I just got to tell you, I quit. I hate this goddamn job anyway. And he looks at you and said, really? Honestly, I was going to compliment you on, just how great you've been this whole week. And suddenly now you're in a quandary. You go, oh God, I'm just joking. It's just been a weird day. I'm just joking. You're not an asshole. God, I feel so stupid. Well, you get the idea that everything that happened in that little hour and a half minute monologue in your life was pushed from one direction to the other. And in no moment were you in control of your experience. Instead, you were reacting to your past circumstances, to other people's choices, to your own moods. At no moment did you actually have a decision. Do you know what that's called when something is just a button waiting to be pushed? A machine. The machine-like, the mechanistic characteristic of being human is so on display day to day. What I just described is not an exceptional day. Maybe the driving to work is exceptional for so many people right now, but the idea of being pushed around emotionally, circumstantially, is so ordinary because most people have no self at all. They're simply a series of mechanisms, a series of push the button and play.
So true. You're so true. I've been thinking about a lot about the school system, and I think the way the schools were constructed, that's what sort of has led to it being this way. This is why I say that, because in schools you're not necessarily taught how to think for yourself. The thoughts are given for you, right? The same, when you watch movies, the thoughts are given for you, and they're constantly being reinforced with the same patterns and the same storylines, and we think we're supposed to react that way. Like it's normal. It's normal to be like, if someone cuts you off on the street while you're driving, and I mean they'll almost hurt themselves, they almost hurt you, they'll hurt your car, insurance goes up, all these different things that are wrong by it. We think because it's wrong, then we need to be having the emotional reaction to it, and that's where I think most people go wrong. That they're not neutral, they're not viewing it in a neutral way.
Yeah, there's a scriptedness to our life, and I would say that education is absolutely a part of it. I mean, that rabbit hole goes pretty deeply. I used to work in a vocational coaching field, and I would help people develop their careers, and so I was quite involved in shaping young women and men as they prepared for entering the workforce. And I got very, very familiar with how the American educational system worked. Part of the directives in the United States educational codes talk about by kindergarten. So this is now the first introductory experience to the educational system for many children. In kindergarten, a child will learn the value of a dollar earned. That's actually one of the directive statements. What's that saying? It's literally saying that we have a certain ideal and we want to imprint it on our children so that when they grow up, they'll know the value of being a good worker, because that is what it means to be in our society, that we would make a dollar and we would spend a dollar, that we know how to be a good little consumer, a good little automaton. It's not just education. I mean, between parents and circumstances and other people's choices and our choices and consequences and genetic coding and certainly the governance of the state and religion and yes, education and instructors. It is amazing that by the time you're in your 30s, you have a single thought intact at all. And really, we don't have thoughts, right? Our thoughts have us. We are we are an amalgam of other people's voices. Mommy said this, daddy said that, teacher said this. We don't have a voice. Yeah. There's just so much clutter over and over.
That's so true. That's so true. I was actually teaching my brother this the other day. I said, just sit down and stop thinking, right? And he was like, he could do it for like 5 seconds where he went into this like mindless state. And I said, okay, good. Now aim to do it instead of for 5 seconds, aim to do it for a minute. And he was like, oh, I can't really do that. I said it's true because the mind is like there's like a dumping ground for other people's problems. And this is something I wrote in my book is that really when other people they're emotional and they're talking to you, they're not really talking about you. They're projecting their emotions with what's happening in this very moment and they're giving it to you. And a lot of people don't know that you can just reject it. You can just completely reject that and you don't have to accept it.
Yeah, and I think the ability you're talking about with your brother there is really an ability that um, not only is it not taught, but the way it's taught, particularly in the West, which of course is a derivative of so many Eastern practices, is very faulty. We might tell a person to find what in Zen is called no mind. And we might say, I want you to become very, very focused on no thing or nothing or zero. The problem with that is that at no point are we ever able to get beyond the voices, because the mere fact of trying to isolate our own voice through that crowd is almost non-existent. The ability to do so, because it's so emaciated. I'll tell you, the better thing to do than to try and focus on our voice or to even try and focus on no voice at all is actually to open one's self up. And this is like level 4 mindfulness here. This is not level 1 mindfulness, but I'll tell you what to do. For 60 days, for 1 hour a day, maybe even begin your day this way, simply let yourself sit and think. No inputs, no distractions, no attempt to focus, no attempt to restrain your mind. Simply observe everything. Watch everything. Listen to everything. Let everything come in. Become your thinking. Don't try and hold it back. Don't try and focus it. Don't try and narrow your attention. If you try and narrow your attention, anything that we resist simply takes us over all the more. Don't try and resist your thoughts. Allow them to crash in. Here's what will happen. Over time, and within that 60 days, you will become incredibly familiar with your thoughts. You'll begin to notice your repetitive patterns, and what happens is you'll become bored. You'll become profoundly tired of the same thoughts over and over, and you will notice how mechanical they are. What will happen then is a slight split, a pause between you, the you who is witnessing the thought, and the thought that just a few days ago you thought you were. Over time, you will notice that this inner witness becomes stronger and stronger, and that you're able to watch your thoughts without having to take them on. So I really challenge you, if mindfulness is something, and I don't go around necessarily selling that gimmick, but if mindfulness is something you're interested in, that's really how to practice it. It's to open yourself up to the totality of all there is without resistance.
That's so true because um, we have the ability to have thoughts about thoughts, and typically, well, we end up this is how I always think, right? Everything either everything is like the stock market, right? Thoughts are like they're gonna go all up and down, right? It doesn't necessarily even mean that it's good or bad, right? First is like eliminating the labels, right? And then and then you have these thoughts and you think, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about work. I'm supposed to be meditating right now. I'm thinking about work right now. I'm thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Why am I thinking about this? Stop thinking about this, right? So now you're having a thought about your thought. So what I say is think about the thoughts that you're thinking, right? you know?
That's right. A few years ago, it snowed pretty heavily where I live, which is in the Pacific Northwest. So it's very unusual that it would snow quite so hard. It left us with a few feet, and the kids were home from school, and my 5-year-old daughter was looking at the street through a large front window, and I was drinking my coffee in the same room. I went to go get a refill of coffee, and suddenly I feel a gust of cold wind, and I look, and she's opened the front door, and she is running barefoot in her pajamas down the snowy road, chasing a local neighborhood dog that was on the loose. Well, this is sort of how the mind works. The mind sort of works like that 5-year-old girl, where we're sitting, we're looking through the clear glass, and we see a wild dog. We have a thought, and we have to chase it. We're out the front door without even putting on shoes or a warm coat. Suddenly, we're off to the races, and we're consumed with it. The better thing to do is to sip your coffee and watch the wild dog run past your window to come and go out of view. You really don't need to have it. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to be consumed by it, but that takes practice. And the practice is actually letting yourself have the thoughts without acting on them, without distracting from them, without attending to them, without trying to focus on them. Simply receive not, reject not, have them. Do this for a time. You'll notice how boring they are, how much you don't want to chase that wild dog.
That's so true. The thought just is like driving by, and it doesn't stay unless we engage with it, right? Unless we like wave to the thought, right? Or we say hello to the thought. We start talking to the thought. It's not gonna stay there. Like there's a beautiful analogy that comes to mind. My friend Sumed Chatterjee, he taught it to me. He said that when happiness comes knocking at your door, it comes in, and you have some tea time with it. You guys, you're talking, you're chatting, and happiness is like, oh, well, look at the time, I've got to get it going now, right? But you're like, no, stay, right? And they're like, oh, I gotta go, right? And they leave. And then in here comes frustration, comes knocking at your door, just pushes right in, right? And we engage with frustration in a way that makes it stay longer, right? But naturally, our emotions, and thoughts, they're gonna go. They're just coming by. They're just saying hello, but they're not really, the way we engage with them is the way that they're gonna come up into our life.
That's right. That's right. And I think that most people, certainly most people I interact with and have been a part of this culture as well, they want something new, right? They want some kind of new technique. They want some kind of new gimmick. They want some kind of new teacher, or new mentor, or new guide, or new book, or new snake oil, or new mindfulness project, or new program, or new directive, or you name it. New is the name of the game. And if you dig a little around that and ask why that is, people, they'll say, well, I tried such and such, and it just didn't work. Well, the deal here is not so much that things have been tried and found wanting, but rather they haven't actually been tried at all. That's the truth. We really do not sufficiently sit with what is. Instead, we resist it. Instead, we we pummel something to death and then we abandon it. We get very gluttonous about something where we'll read whatever the new thing is, or we'll watch it on YouTube, or we'll binge on the podcast or whatever it is, and then somehow, without fully composting it, without fully digesting it and allowing it to permeate us, we'll say, been there, done that, and we won't actually sufficiently give time for it to sink into our cells. The idea here is that we're all playing addition games. We're trying to add to ourselves. That's the ego. That's what the ego does. The ego wants to build a skyscraper. The ego is terribly interested in adding one thing on top of the other. Well, here's my gym routine, and here's my meditation routine, and here's my book reading routine, and here's my romantic routine, and we're building this tower up, 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 up. But if that's the ego, the essence really isn't interested in that at all. Who we are underneath it all is not very interested in our construction project, in our gimmicks, in our tactics. Actually, who we are under it all, our naked self, is very interested in us not being a hypocrite. And that's why it so often shows up in the form of shadow. That's why shadow comes up so often for people, because what we've done in order to be acceptable, in order to connect with others, in order to relate to others, is we've put forward only these best selves, only these highly engineered, processed selves that, again, a skyscraper being built with only the best materials, while all the while our hidden self down below goes untended to. And so what the shadow does is it reminds us there's more going on than meets the eye. So when a person acts out and destroys their life because of some affair or some sexual deviance, or when their inability to be very kind, they explode in anger, or maybe when they're just too nice, they can't even assert when they should. What's actually happening is their shadow is tapping them on the shoulder and saying, wake up, stop being such a goddamn hypocrite. You're more than what you're letting on. And so that's an invitation to get very naked again. There's this beautiful story in the Hebrew scripture. It's one of the centerpieces of the Jewish mystical tradition of the divine deity, God, coming to the patriarch Moses in a burning bush, in a bush that is on fire but is not consumed. And of course, in some ways, Moses is terrified. He doesn't know what to do with this, like all of us are when we see something that is burning very brightly, but not in a destructive way. Moses pauses and he wonders who this is and what this is. And the voice that responds to him says, take off your shoes. This is sacred ground. The invitation is always to take off our shoes, is always to make contact with the soil, is always to get very, very natural, to become naked again, to strip off all the layers that we've put on, the things that we've covered ourselves with, so that we're simply making contact with reality as it is. So when we talk about the shadow, and that's so much of what I do, when we talk about that, really, we're talking about that still small voice that may have actually grown very loud, that is simply inviting us to take off our shoes, inviting us to become natural again. Take off our pretenses. Stop being such a goddamn hypocrite. Stop being someone who talks like this and acts like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Knowledge is is adding more things, and wisdom is taking away things, right? We just get so caught up in adding more, 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 right? We're in this perpetual state of moreness, um, of this perpetual state of emptiness, right? And so many times we think that we need to keep feeding the emptiness, right? But see, the emptiness is so big, the void is so big, it's just there for goodness, right? Because the way I like to think about things in, like, sometimes in the perspective of God, right? And God is all, right? God is all. So God is always expanding the reality, always expanding the universe, creating more planets, creating, more money, more people. There's always more creation. But within that creation is expanding inside of a vast emptiness. The emptiness is bigger than it gives space for stuff to grow inside of it. So we have these big voids inside of ourselves, but they're just there so that to give room for new things to grow, and they're not necessarily bad things.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, think about it. Let's take something like anxiety. A lot of people come to me because they're anxious about life. They're not confident about living, and they want to develop an uncontrived way of being alive. They want an anxiety-free life, to maybe put it in those terms. So they're searching for something. They're searching for something different. They're searching for something new. They're searching for something that can help them move past their anxiety. Of course, that's completely the wrong approach. That's searching for an escape, searching for a technique.
Mm-hmm.
The 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 thing here is to actually turn to your anxiety and not to face it. That's another gimmick. That'll take you down a linguistic path. But rather to begin to see it, to look at it, to feel it in your body, to know exactly where you sense it and where its origins are, and what it has you afraid of, what it really is, to begin to get very, very acquainted. You used that reference of guest earlier, and this idea of guests coming to knock. One thing I noticed years ago was, as I was hosting a number of people to my own dinner table, was that guests always have something to say. People really have something they want to talk to you about. They really want to, whether it's a story or a problem. They have something burning, and it might take them the whole night to get it out, especially if it's very intimate. And so the night goes by and they don't say anything, and you don't say anything about it because you don't know what's going on in their life. And it gets, time for them to leave, and they don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
They don't leave. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh dear God, when will they get out of my house? I've served them a good meal. I've made them dessert, given them wine. When will they leave?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally they turn to me and they say, I've got to tell you, ...
Mm-hmm.
When they say it, when they unload themselves, when they get it off their chest, when they're able to actually get there, suddenly they're ready to go. If you tell a visitor to leave before he's had his say, he's going to keep staying over, around, dragging his feet everywhere on your carpet. The thing to do is to say, why did you come here? What do you have to teach me? Where did you come from? What do you have to say to me? Suddenly then the whole thing is clear and you can move on. Listen, I'll be very honest. You have a lot of people in this world, and I think the therapeutic system of which I was a part of for a number of years, the world of psychology, I'm no longer a part of, thankfully, because I think it's so often such a shtick. They send out this message of it's about the journey. oh, it's all about the journey. And, just medicate and meditate and, get your diet right and keep seeing me for therapy once a week till the kingdom come. And, then we'll be fine. Listen, this is total bullshit. It really, really is. And anyone who tells you that it's all about the journey is an asshole. And the reason why they're an asshole is because every journey that I know has a destination. If you're not going somewhere, if you don't have a destination in view, you're not on a journey. You're sitting on your ass at home eating potato chips. And that's fine. You can be on that. That's great. Sit on your couch. But don't call it a journey. That's not a journey. It's being an animal. And so what I would say is have an aim, have a destination. And if the people who you're working with don't know how to get you to that destination, then you shouldn't be working with them. And unfortunately, I think a number of industries, a number of industrial complexes have both sold us and been sold themselves. A generation of people who work in those industries have been raised with this idea of the perpetual journey, of the endless journey that's simply a going forth endlessly in a loop that never actually gets to a destination. This is insanity. So I think when someone really, really is able to know where their aim is, to know where their intent is, and then to begin to look at it, again, going back to this anxiety, they can in fact be free of it. But it means they're going to have to sit with it. It means they're going to have to sufficiently be with that thing. And that may not be very pretty.
I don't know if you've heard of Marissa Peer. She does hypnotherapy. She's popular on Mind Valley. She's one of like the best coaches on Mind Valley. And she said, ever since she said this, like a lot of like things just came into understanding. And it's that you mentioned like, have a goal, have like a destination you're aiming to. A lot of times our conscious mind doesn't know what our goal is, but our subconscious mind does, right? Which means that there always is a goal, right? So she said, if your problem was like your friend and they were sitting right there next to you, and one of my dear friends, he always says to personify your problems, give them a name, give them a face, give them clothing, like really create their character, give them a voice, and ask them, why, what is your purpose in this, right? So there is a purpose in anxiety. There is a purpose in depression. There is a purpose in addiction, right? There is a goal that you're trying to get with doing that, right? Always 100%. And a lot of times we don't realize that goal can be obtained through a different method.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes there's things that have all the pros without the cons attached to it, that certain elements, particularly certain shadow elements, have. But I'll tell you that unconscious bit, again, going back to the shadow, I really, really believe that the hidden places of ourselves, and even the things that we want to label as the destructive components of self, they really are the things that keep us honest about what it is we want. Yeah. For instance, a man might very reasonably have, a situation happen at work where he loses his temper, he blows up, and he tells off his boss, and he gets fired. And then he goes home and he's, sobbing and saying, God, why did I do it? Why did I do it again? Why did I do that? Well, the reality is that thing that he might readily label his shadow, this thing that takes him over, this anger that takes him over, while he might label that as his darkness, the truth is that may very well be his guide saying, get the hell out of that job. He simply doesn't have the strength. He hasn't sufficiently developed himself enough to be able to say, I don't want to be here. So he has to kind of create a series of situations that will push him out. Of course, this gets back to the mechanical aspect of being human. If I said to you right now, get angry. if I just said to you, I want you to get angry, I want you to get very mad, you might not be able to. In fact, you might say to yourself, well, do something, make me angry. Again, push my button so that I can become such and such thing. To be a human is to be able to spontaneously decide the state you wish to have and to create it, to generate it. To be a machine is to have your button pushed. So often, the mechanical aspect of who we are needs a button pushed.
So good. So good. That's so good. Just how people are like, I need something else to make me happy. I need someone else to make me happy. Right? You want somebody else to come in, press the pop boop beep boop, like you're like Pinocchio, I say I tell people you're the puppeteer, but you're acting like you're the puppet right now. You have you have an internal locus of control, but you're acting like what's outside is the thing that controls you.
That's right. That's right. And in reality, it's because we've spent so much time developing this self-operating system, this fixated, compulsive, and regressive self that we think, is roughly our normal self or our shadow or our gold, our strengths and our weaknesses. And we think is us, but really is sort of like a pinball machine, just continuing to ping pong our emotions around between these fixed points, which are, again, just amalgams of other people's voices, of questions, problems that we tried to solve very early on in childhood. And that very mechanical self-operating system that we've spent a lot of time developing, given a lot of attention to, and has really been cultivated over the years, isn't helping us. The thing that didn't get the attention, the thing that got cut to the wayside, the thing that got dispossessed, were the parts that didn't belong. Those are the parts we hid. And interestingly, those are the parts that have the most potential to lead us to our essence. That's why I always say the road to your essence is through your shadow.
Definitely. That's one of the universal laws, actually. And it was in the Hermetic teachings. I don't know if you've heard of Hermeticism. Yeah, you spoke about the Jewish teachings, which sort of comes from Hermeticism, and I believe it's the law of equilibrium, where if it's like a small problem, then you get a small solution that's going to lead you to a small reward. But our biggest problems are going to require a big solution, right? Which typically tends to be like a variety of little small things that make it big. But all of those things add up to a really big reward. Big problem, big reward. It's always like that.
That's it. That's it. And I think actually this is interesting. I tell people a lot this with who want to come, who want to work with me, that know what your aim is. Know what you really wish. The story of Aladdin that Disney has brought to us is actually a beautiful wisdom story that's drawn from various Arabic and Sufi traditions that really lays bare this idea that we may have many wants. And of course, the Cave of Treasures has many, many wants. But there's only one lamp. And that lamp containing this genie, he only will grant 3 wishes. The idea here is that we may have infinite number of wants, but energetically speaking, we really only have a very limited amount of wishes in life. We only have a very limited amount of wills to power something, to see something through to the end. And how will you spend that energy? Again, the admonition here is touch anything in the cave, distract yourself with any number of wants, and you won't get the lamp.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is, if a man or a woman is coming to me and they want to work on something, they want to work on something like very cheap, that they just want to take from the cave of treasures, that's fine. We'll work on that. Like a good genie, I'll grant them their wish, even if their wish is low level. But know what your aim is. If you say, I want transformation, if that's your aim, well, that's a different story. And that's costly. Most people don't really know what they wish, have a lot of wants, and have almost no clue about what they actually wish in life. So when you're going to a wise teacher, when you're going to someone who actually deals in a technology of change, know what you really, really are aiming for.
Mm. And if you don't know, we're gonna help you find it.
Oh no, my goal is not to actually help anyone who cannot help himself. I'm not going to work harder than the person who comes to me. Um,
Yeah,
one of my favorite stories, a tradition, is of a very wise teacher from the late 1800s. And he had a particular disciple who followed him around for 9 years, and uh, all over Europe, all over Asia. And during this 9 years, this wise teacher would turn to this would-be disciple every time there was a meeting. Let's just say roughly once a week. And he would look at him and he would say, "What is it you wish?" And the disciple floundered. The disciple didn't know what to say. And he would always say whatever the good thing was. He would always kind of parrot the latest thing that the teacher was talking about. Oh, I want power, or oh, I want this, or oh, I want that. Every time the teacher would silently look away from him and never give him more than that
Mm-hmm.
question. Never give him an exercise, never give him a teaching directly for him, never give him one of his discourses. And
Mm-hmm.
the disciple was sad for years, but he kept following. Finally, after 9 years, the teacher looks at him, as he had many times before, and says, "What is it you wish?" And the disciple looks at him and says, "I wish to know how to answer that question." The teacher begins to weep, goes over and kisses the disciple's neck and says, "Finally, you are ready."
It's very true. Questions are the way to get to where we want. And I feel like most of the time, people are asking the wrong question. They're always they're like it's like that one meme that you see about the kid who was eating straws so that he could protect turtles from eating the straws in the ocean, and the meme says, it's wrong, but he's got the right idea, and the right idea is to ask yourself complex questions, right? And if you're not where you are yet, you're not asking the right questions.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, questions, which of course we wish to avoid like the plague. Every time we get into a place where we have a genuine question, we go to try and convert it into an answer. We do not want to sit with the questions. We certainly don't want to live them. Every time we have a question, a genuine question, come up in our life, we source it out, we Google it, we look up an expert, we talk to the people who have asked questions and spent a lot of time at university so that they can answer our questions. We avoid anything that sounds remotely like a real question, but you are absolutely right. Our ability to live an uncontrived life, our ability to move beyond performance and to live into presence depends upon the questions we are living.
Exactly. One of my mentors, he says your level of intelligence and consciousness, your level of awareness is is uh is shown to us depending on the questions that you're asking. Like so many guys, when it comes to dating, relationships, women, they're asking, what do I say to a girl? What's the first thing that I say to a girl? How do I keep the conversation going? Like, these are like super super simple questions, but I remember even at one point I was asking myself, like, how do I talk to a girl? Well, you just do. You just do. You know, that's all you got. How do you keep the conversation going? You talk about things that you like, right? You ask them what they like. You're like super simple, but there's this anxiety of not wanting to be wrong. That's the biggest thing, and this is why I always tell people: stop trying to be right. Stop trying, right? And so many times when people can't ask them a question and they don't have the answer, I learned this technique. It's so good. It's so good. I ask them. No, actually, no. I tell them. I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would you say? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't know. You're giving them permission to be wrong because people don't like to give themselves permission to be wrong.
Yeah, we're addicted to being right and looking good. I mean, this is the prime directive of the self-operating system, right? The self-operating system, the coding that it operates off of, and all of our defense mechanisms, all of our buffers, things like lying, things like playing the victim, things like being the hostile, angry juvenile, things like all of these defense systems that we have in place are all wired around this idea of being right and looking good. And that really is the name of the game for so many people. And you know what, man, I got to tell you, what you just said, I've been there. I remember I was dating very early on, a person who would become my long-term partner. And I remember calling her up and saying, um, I'm getting a haircut soon. What kind of haircut should I get? And she said, I don't know. Whatever you like. I said, oh, but what do you want me to get? I don't care. I don't care. Get whatever makes you feel good. What do you mean? And then she says, the sexiest thing that you could do is know what you like. Oh, so, if you're a guy who's, listening to this, if you want to develop real game, it's about inner game. It's about actually knowing who the hell you are. And that is a process. That is not something you instantly figure out. And this is the mind-blowing truth here. You do not know how to be yourself. In fact, you are not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like you can't get from A to Z instantly. It really is a process, but here's the thing, it is a destination. And if that is your aim, you in fact can arrive to that spot. If that is your wish, you can get there. And that's inner game. Have an aim.
Have
Yeah.
a name, have a goal.
You say purpose right there. One thing I tell men over and over who I work with is purpose is simply knowing who you are and living it out intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. I would say, again, all of this comes down to very, very singularly, who the hell are you? And you begin to get there by actively asking What am I? Observe your thoughts. Observe, don't resist them. Observe your impulses, don't resist them. Observe your desires, don't resist them. Begin to get to know your machine. And as you begin to get to know your machine, your essence will naturally begin to come online. Listen, you cannot both strengthen your essence and your machine. As long as you are growing your ego, your essence will diminish. But as you watch it, as you strengthen your inner essence, that's what will grow by virtue of simply observing. Resist not, reject not, get to know your machine.
Rainier, thank you so much for this amazing interview. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets thousands of views. If it easily becomes one of our best interviews ever. I just want to, let you, tell people where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, most often, if you want to connect with me, you can find me at Rainier Wylde on Instagram. You can go over to my website, Rainier Wylde. That's Rainier, RAINIERWYLDE.com, and /start here. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, to connect. I do group work, I do individual work with a select number of people, all around the idea of knowing who you are and then beginning to live that intentionally.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, be the best, forget the rest. I'll see you later.
Thanks so much, man.
Have a good one.
If you would like to contact Sumed for peak performance coaching, go to @FlowZone Academy on Instagram. That's FLOZONE Academy. If you would like to connect to your higher self, contact Ivan at odd.resilience. That's ODD.resilience. Also, make sure you follow the Better Man podcast on Instagram. See you next time.